Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, 4, and 5. You Better Watch Out, The Initiation, and The Toymaker. All three films were made back-to-back, released direct-to-video from 1989 to 1991, and then promptly disappeared into obscurity. Most horror fans who didn't grow up during the video store era probably had no idea there even were SND sequels beyond Part 2. Those who did some digging and discovered the three likely also discovered that they were not highly regarded. Viewers expecting a continuation of the first two Silent Night, Deadly Night films were in for a surprise. While Part 3, You Better Watch Out, is a slasher, that's really all it has in common with the first two. Parts 4 and 5 aren't slashers at all, and Part 4 is a body horror movie about a witch's coven. Seriously. Of the three, Part 5, The Toymaker, currently has the highest rating on the Internet Movie Database, with a 4.5 out of 10. What's more, the movies were not easily accessible for many years. In 2009, the trio were re-released on this DVD set, which featured VHS rips of all three. After this set went out of print, all three were eventually available on streamers like Tubi and Shudder, but in the same poor quality. Thanks to the newly released Silent Night, Deadly Night collection, part of the Vestron Collector series, all three movies have been treated to new transfers and a bevy of extras. And since it 'tis the season, I decided to revisit all three movies to see if they're truly deserving of their lowly reputations. I'll also be discussing the new transfer and extras for all three. So because the weather outside is frightful and the fire inside delightful, sit back, relax, grab a cup of hot cocoa, and let's revisit Silent Night, Deadly Night, Parts 3, 4, and 5. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, You Better Watch Out finds Ricky Caldwell in a coma under the care of a shady doctor who's attempting to create a psychic link between him and a blind woman named Laura. Why? Hell if I know. Soon Ricky shrugs off his long slumber, thanks to, you guessed it, some drunken chump dressed as Saint Nick, who then offers Ricky a swig from his bottle. Unfortunately, Ricky just says no to drugs and alcohol, but yes to murder. Now psychically linked to Laura, and with the knowledge that she's heading to Granny's house to spend Christmas, Ricky decides to crash the party, killing anyone in his path, particularly those wearing the color red. The color red is a trigger for Ricky now, because so no-ho on the roho. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is notable for a couple of reasons. The first being that it's co-written and directed by Monty Hellman of Two-Lane Blacktop and Cockfighter fame. Hellman was hell-bent on bringing the same kind of artistic sensibilities here that he had to those movies. Does it work? God, no. However, it does give the movie a dreamy and offbeat quality. And speaking of offbeat, Ricky is played this time around by Bill Moseley. Moseley spends the majority of the movie shuffling around like a zombie and whispering, "Laura, Laura." It's both an odd character choice for Ricky and an odd casting choice for the character. Ricky was anything but zombie-like in Silent Night, Deadly Night 2.
Garbage day! Huh? No!
See what I mean? Moseley was best known at the time for playing Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, a portrayal that was anything but subdued. So you hire an actor who can go big in a most impressive way and have him just shuffle around. But the odd choices for the character don't stop there. Moseley's also wearing this apparatus on his head that looks like a salad bowl. It's got blinking lights and antenna attached, and you can see his brain and some orange fluid swishing around inside. It's absolutely ridiculous and pointless, but if you remember one thing about this movie, it's the salad bowl on Moseley's head. I once asked Mr. Moseley what his fondest memory of Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 was, to which he responded, getting his SAG card. The movie co-stars Laura Herring in one of her earliest film roles and Eric Derry, who, with his long curly hair and penchant for leather and denim, could pass as the bassist for pretty much any 80s metal outfit. Samantha Scully isn't the most likable heroine, but she delivers a fine performance as Laura. Richard Beamer and Robert Culp round out a surprisingly strong supporting cast. By slasher standards, You Better Watch Out is pretty unremarkable, but aside from some pacing issues, it's really not that bad. I've seen far worse slashers receive much better treatment. Of these movies, and I consider You Better Watch Out to be the weakest of the three, I still find myself drawn to rewatching it more often than the other two. I can't quite put my finger on why. Maybe because it's the most slashery of the three, or because I kind of appreciate Hellman's attempts to make the third Silent Night, Deadly Night movie an art film. Or maybe I just can't get enough of that salad bowl. As far as the picture quality and sound quality on this release for all three movies, none of them have ever looked or sounded better. Granted, all three are presented in the full screen aspect ratio, but that's because all three of them were shot to go straight to video, and that was the home video format. And yes, you could stretch them out to fit a widescreen aspect ratio, but they look like crap. I give the picture quality and the sound quality for all three of these movies a solid 4 out of 5. As far as extras for Part 3 are concerned, first up we get Outside the Brain Cap, an interview with Bill Moseley. It's 16 minutes and 24 seconds in length. Mr. Moseley discusses getting cast as Ricky, working with Monty Hellman in the cast. He discusses the brain cap he had to wear in the movie and trying to outshine the brain cap with his performance. He discusses being terrified of having to cry on camera and his crying scene in Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 getting applauded by the crew, and more. Next, we have Monty and Me, an interview with creative consultant Stephen Gaydos. It's 20 minutes and 41 seconds in length. Mr. Gaydos discusses first meeting Monty Hellman, working with him on Cockfighter, and then Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. He discusses how he and Hellman were brought into Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 and how proud Monty Hellman was of the movie. Mr. Gaydos discusses his contributions to the screenplay, acquiring the shooting locations in Piru, California, and more. Next, we have, for a live audience, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 with executive producer Richard Gladstein. It's 9 minutes and 22 seconds in length. Mr. Gladstein discusses his role at IVE and the direct-to-video markets of the late 80s and early 90s. He discusses how Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 came to be, being a fan of Monty Hellman, what he learned from watching Hellman work, and more. We get a trailer and a still gallery, and we get an audio commentary with film historian Jarrett Gahan. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, The Initiation finds a young reporter investigating a deadly case of spontaneous combustion that soon finds her knee-deep in slime, pus, goo, huge cockroaches, and mutant larvae courtesy of a witch's coven. Now that sounds like a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie to me. Co-written and directed by Brian, Society, and Bride of Reanimator Yuzna, The Initiation has a lot going on during its 87-minute runtime. Not all of it works, but it's a darn entertaining potpourri of witchcraft, body horror, and paranoia. Neith Hunter plays our young reporter Kim, who's desperate to make a mark in a male-dominated workplace. Her co-workers, including her editor played by Reggie Bannister, disregard her aspirations and think all she's good for is making coffee. So right off the bat, Kim is a sympathetic protagonist. You also begin to feel for Hunter the actress, because she's either constantly covered in or wallowing in slime. And that's when she's not being violated by and then regurgitating huge larvae or under siege from giant cockroaches. The Initiation plays more like a body horror movie than a slasher. The body horror elements are handled quite well, and the surrealist designs and makeup effects from Screaming Mad George are nice and icky. The movie also benefits from a great cast, including the aforementioned Neith Hunter and Reggie Bannister. The always entertaining Clint Howard plays a character named Ricky. I don't think he's supposed to be that Ricky, but who knows? Howard has an indelibly bizarre charm that he brings to every performance, and The Initiation is no exception. And when he's stomping around Hunter's apartment, brandishing a steak knife, and both aggressively and politely encouraging her to accompany him back to the witch's lair, that's what I call entertainment. Alice Beasley and Maude Octopussy Adams round out a strong supporting cast. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 is also notable for being the most polished looking of the three latter sequels, and sports the best score, courtesy of Richard Band. The initiation is never boring, and so bizarre that it's difficult to look away. The mystery elements are fairly compelling, and because you're invested in Hunter as the lead, you care about the outcome. If upon first appraisal you were taken aback by the initiation's change of course from anything even closely resembling a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie, I'd recommend giving it another look. Of these three movies, it's definitely the odd man out. And that's not a bad thing. As far as the extras are concerned, on Part 4, first up we have Our Man Ricky with Clint Howard. It's 13 minutes and 30 seconds in length. Mr. Howard discusses auditioning for the role of Ricky, enjoying how strange the story was, and his rapport with Brian Usna. He discusses working with his co-stars and Screaming Mad George's slimy creations. He discusses his brief appearance on Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toymaker, how proud he is of his work in the initiation and the movie as a whole, and more. Next, we have Ritualistic Behavior, an interview with screenwriter Woody Keith. It's 13 minutes and 41 seconds in length. Mr. Keith, a.k.a. Zeph E. Daniel, discusses working with Brian Usna to develop the screenplay for Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, the Lilith mythology that inspired the story, not wanting to follow the rules of a Santa Claus slasher. He wonders if you remove the Silent Night, Deadly Night from the title and it was just called The Initiation, if it would have been better received, and more. Next, we have Twisted Visions, an interview with surrealist design and effects artist Screaming Mad George. It's 17 minutes and 31 seconds in length. Mr. George discusses first meeting Brian Usna for Society, hitting it off with Usna, and how that led to Silent Night, Deadly Night 4. He discusses designing and creating the larvae and cockroach creatures, as well as the fused hands and leg gags, and more. Next, we have for a live audience, Silent Night, Deadly Night, an interview with executive producer Richard Gladstein. It's 8 minutes and 33 seconds in length. Mr. Gladstein discusses getting the okay from live to do Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, approaching Brian Usna to direct the film, aspiring to do something different than what had come before. He discusses the cast, the effects of Screaming Mad George, and how Brian Usna taught him how to be a producer. We get a trailer and a still gallery, and we get an audio commentary with director Brian Usna. Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, the Toymaker finds a young boy named Derek, rendered mute after witnessing his father's death at the hands of a haywire Christmas toy. Fast forward 1 year, and we're introduced to the Toymaker, Joe Petto, and his son Pino. Joe Petto, Geppetto, and his son Pino. Subtlety. Well, Pino has taken a liking to Derek's mother, Sarah, and wants her to be his mommy, too. Ugh. But first he has to take Derek out of the picture, because Pino wants Sarah all to himself. Double. Ugh. How does Pino go about his attempts at ending young Derek's life? With booby-trapped toys, of course. Although the toys have the darndest way of finding themselves in the hands of people who aren't Derek. People who end up either badly mangled or dead. Upon its release in the summer of 1984, the original Silent Night, Deadly Night found itself in the center of a maelstrom of controversy. You know the story, I'm sure, but what you may not know is one of the most vocal advocates against the film was actor Mickey Rooney. In his day, Rooney had been the most bankable star in show business. He was a 4-time Oscar nominee and bona fide Hollywood royalty. And if you think he'd ever lower himself to being in the 4th sequel to a movie that he so vociferously stood against just a few years prior, you'd be wrong. Because Rooney seemingly had no issue accepting the role of Joe Petto in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toymaker. Time is truly the great changer of things. And don't expect Rooney to phone it in here either. The production may have only been able to afford his services for 4 days, but he went hard the whole time. And speaking of going hard, Brian Brimmer plays Pino, and if you couldn't already tell, he's not a real boy. Petto and Pino's father-son relationship is strained, to say the least, an angle which Brimmer and Rooney bring to life wonderfully. You get the sense that at one point there was a loving father-son relationship there. However, that point has long since passed. Brimmer steals the show here. His performance ranges from childlike innocence to killer robot's ominousness. You can feel his desire to want to be part of a real family and be loved like a human, but his approach to obtaining that is inappropriate. See, Pino is attracted to Sarah in more ways than one, if you catch my drift. At one point, Pino is thrusting his anatomically incorrect pelvis into Sarah's groin while pleading, "I love you, mommy. I want you, mommy. I love you, mommy." Triple. Ugh. This time around, writer and producer Brian Usna turned directing duties over to Martin Kitrosser. Kitrosser had previously penned the scripts for both Friday the 13th Part 3 and Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. After The Toymaker, Kitrosser went on to become Tarantino's go-to script supervisor from Reservoir Dogs on. Kitrosser provides a steady hand behind the camera. He doesn't do anything flashy, but his straightforward approach makes the weird moments all the more striking when they occur. The last act of The Toymaker is quite well done and actually packs an emotional punch that resonates. It's no wonder that The Toymaker is the most highly regarded among these three movies, and it deserves far better than a measly 4.5 out of 10. As far as extras for Part 5, first up we have The Best Presents, an interview with co-writer and producer Brian Usna. It's 18 minutes and 15 seconds in length. Mr. Usna discusses meeting Richard Gladstein and Gladstein asking him to make Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, subverting the Killer Santa aspects of Silent Night, Deadly Night, but then wanting to atone for that with Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. He discusses working on the screenplay with Martin Kitrosser, who he recommended to direct. He discusses not knowing about Mickey Rooney's advocacy against the first film during production and how great Rooney was to work with, and more. Next, we have Pino's Truth, an interview with actor Brian Brimmer. It's 19 minutes and 59 seconds in length. Mr. Brimmer discusses working on Society with Brian Usna and becoming friends with the director. He discusses getting cast in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5 and how stoked he was to play Pino, the shooting locations, how amazing it was to work with Mickey Rooney. He discusses working in the Pino bodysuit and shooting the I Love You Mommy scene. Mr. Brimmer also discusses the film's fandom, and more. Next, we have The Most Toys, an interview with surrealist design and effects artist Screaming Mad George. It's 13 minutes and 25 seconds in length. Mr. George discusses creating the makeup effects and bodysuit for Pino and how easy Brian Brimmer was to work with, designing and creating the killer toys, and more. Next, we have for a live audience, Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, an interview with executive producer Richard Gladstein. It's 8 minutes and 35 seconds in length. Mr. Gladstein discusses working with Martin Kitrosser and his long working relationship with Kitrosser since. He discusses how great Mickey Rooney was and how much he enjoyed listening to his stories. He discusses how fond he is of the 3 Silent Night, Deadly Night films he produced, and more. We get a trailer and still gallery, and we get an audio commentary with co-writer and director Martin Kitrosser. You know, it's strange to think how much imagination went into the 4th and 5th entries in a direct-to-video horror franchise. By the 4th or 5th entry in most horror franchises, the die has been cast, and there's very little deviation from that formula. The fact that each movie here has its own unique quirks, let's just say, and because they share very little to no continuity, each one feels distinctively its own. That's what makes these movies special, and not at all deserving of their dubious reputations. Now, I don't watch these every holiday season the same way I do Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2, but I've never had a lousy time watching any of the 3. I recommend them all this holiday season, and I highly recommend the Silent Night, Deadly Night collection from the Vestron Collector series. Let me know your thoughts on Silent Night, Deadly Nights Parts 3, 4, and 5 down in the comments section below. And let me know which one is your favorite of the 3 and why. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you're not following me on social media, those links are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope everybody out there is having a great, safe, healthy, and happy holiday season. And I'd like to wish you all the merriest of Christmases. Take care, and until next time, peace. Thank you to all my patrons and channel members. I appreciate your generosity and support of my channel. Become a patron today and have a say in what content appears on my channel. Join me for monthly live streams and much more. Become a channel member today and get access to exclusive badges and emotes to use when I stream. Both those links are in the description. Say hello to the internet, Jeremy.
Hello to the internet.